Welcome to Void Case Files. I'm your host, and tonight we're diving into one of the most disturbing cases to ever cross my desk. Before we begin, if you're enjoying these deep dives into the unexplained, hit that subscribe button. We're aiming for 1,000 subscribers by the new year, and with your help, we can get there. We're posting daily videos, bringing you the most unexplained cases from across the country. Now, let's get into tonight's case. As a Minnesota sheriff, I've seen my share of strange things on these lakes, but nothing prepared me for the night the water started to glow. It wasn't algae, it wasn't natural. This is something else entirely. Something ancient has been disturbed, and I fear it's finally awake. My name is Eric Lindholm, and I need to tell you what happened on Lake Superior last fall. Not the sanitized version in the official reports, not the story the county commissioners wanted me to tell. The truth. Because 6 people are gone, and the families deserve more than lies about drowning accidents and tragic coincidences. I was born in Two Harbors, Minnesota, 3rd generation to wear a badge in Lake County. My grandfather patrolled these same waters in the 60s, back when the oar boats ran day and night, and you could set your watch by their horns. My father took over in the 80s. Both of them taught me the same lesson: respect Lake Superior. She's not just water. She's got a temperament, moods that'll change faster than you can react. One minute she's calm as glass, the next she's throwing 20-foot swells that'll snap a freighter in half. What they never told me, what maybe they didn't know or wouldn't say, is that something lives in her deepest places. Something that was here long before the first Europeans arrived, before the first Anishinaabe settled these shores. Something that remembers. October 28th, 2023. Saturday morning, the kind of cold that gets into your bones. I was at my kitchen table working through paperwork when the call came in at 6:23. Dispatch said a woman at Burlington Bay was reporting her husband missing. Boat found, no body. I grabbed my jacket and was out the door. Lake County covers 2,062 square miles. More than 800 of those miles are water. I'm responsible for patrolling Lake Superior's North Shore from Knife River up to Silver Bay, watching over about 10,625 people. That number doubles when tourists flood in during summer, but by late October, it's just us locals. The kind of place where you know everyone's name, where the biggest excitement is usually breaking up a fight at the Harbour Inn after the Packers lose. Ingrid Johansson was standing by her car when I pulled into the public access parking lot, arms wrapped tight around herself despite the thick wool coat. Her face had that particular kind of pale you only see when someone's in shock. "He left at 5 this morning," she said, before I could even introduce myself. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. "Said the walleye were biting early. Oscar always comes back by 7 for breakfast. Always. Oscar Johansson. I knew him, same as I knew most folks in Two Harbors. 71 years old, retired oar boat captain. The man had spent 30 years on those massive freighters, hauling iron ore and taconite from Two Harbors out to steel mills on the eastern lakes. He knew Superior the way most people know their own driveway. If there was a current, a shoal, a shipping lane to avoid, Oscar knew it by heart. The Coast Guard found his boat around 8:30, drifting about a quarter mile off the Agate Bay breakwater. When they towed it in, I climbed aboard to take a look. The engine was still running, just idling along like he'd stepped away for a minute. His tackle box sat open on the bench seat. Inside was the usual assortment: hooks and sinkers and plastic worms. A thermos of coffee rested in the cup holder, and when I touched it, the metal was still warm. The air temperature that morning was 34 degrees. Oscar's wool jacket, the heavy one with the red and black check pattern that Ingrid said he never went on the water without, was folded neatly on the passenger seat like he'd taken it off on purpose. The Coast Guard launched a full search. 12 hours they were out there, covering every inch of water between Burlington Bay and Agate Bay. They had side-scan sonar, thermal imaging, dive teams suited up and ready. They found nothing. Not a body, not a life jacket, not a shoe. It was like Oscar Johansson had simply ceased to exist. I stayed with Ingrid until her daughter arrived from Duluth, then headed back to the station with Oscar's tackle box. Something about it was bothering me, nagging at the back of my mind. I spread the contents out on my desk under the fluorescent lights, and that's when I really saw them. The fishing lures were destroyed, not broken or bent, but corroded. The metal was green with oxidation, the hooks brittle and flaking apart when I touched them. They looked like something you'd pull out of a shipwreck that had been underwater for decades, but Oscar had used this equipment that very morning. I've been around boats my entire life. I know what lake water does to metal. This wasn't normal wear. This was something else. Dr. Helen Saarinen arrived from UMD the next afternoon. She's a marine biologist, specializes in freshwater ecosystems. I'd worked with her before on a pollution case, and she had a reputation for being thorough and not jumping to conclusions. She set up her microscope on my desk and spent 20 minutes examining one of those corroded lures without saying a word. "This is impossible," she finally said, still peering through the eyepiece. "Which part?" "All of it." She sat back, rubbing her eyes. "The copper oxidation here takes years to develop in freshwater. Years, Eric. These lures have aged 30 years overnight. And look at this." She showed me the water samples she'd taken from the bilge of Oscar's boat, where lake water had sloshed in. The mineral content is off the charts. Copper levels that shouldn't exist in open water. Copper from where? That's what I don't understand. Lake Superior has native copper deposits, sure. The Keweenaw Peninsula, some areas along the North Shore. Indigenous peoples mined it for thousands of years. But the copper stays in the rock. It doesn't leach into the water like this. She looked up at me, and I could see she was genuinely unsettled. Something is putting copper into this water. Something recent. She left me with the samples and a promise to run more tests. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing Oscar's boat drifting empty, the engine still running, the neatly folded jacket. A man doesn't fold his jacket if he's about to drown. 5 days later, on November 2nd, my radio crackled at 11:15 in the morning. Coast Guard reporting 2 divers overdue, last known position off Silver Bay. Partners on shore had lost contact at 10:47, Lars and Anders Karlsson. I knew them too. Brothers, 34 and 38, professional dive team. They made their living exploring shipwrecks, documenting them, sometimes recovering artifacts with proper permits. These weren't weekend warriors playing around in scuba gear. These guys were technical divers, the kind who could handle deep water and cold temperatures and tight spaces inside wrecked vessels. They'd been diving the Hesper, a wooden freighter that sank in 1905. She sits in about 90 feet of water, her hull still mostly intact. It's a popular dive site, well documented. Nothing dangerous about it if you know what you're doing. And the Carlson brothers definitely knew what they were doing. Their dive boat was exactly where it should be, properly anchored. All safety protocols followed to the letter. Their air tanks sat on the deck, half full. No equipment failure, no emergency beacons activated. The brothers were simply gone. The Coast Guard sent divers down 3 days later. They found the Carlson brothers' dive lights on the lake bed, arranged in a perfect circle. 15 feet in diameter, each light positioned with deliberate precision, all of them still on, beams pointing up toward the surface like some kind of beacon. I went down to the dock when they brought the lights up. The lead diver, a guy named Chris I'd worked with before, climbed out of his dry suit shaking his head. "I've been diving for 20 years, he said. "I've seen some weird stuff down there, but this doesn't make sense. No diver arranges their equipment like that. You don't waste time at depth doing geometry. Every second counts when you're that cold, that deep." "Any sign of the brothers?" "Nothing. No bodies, no equipment, no disturbance in the silt. It's like they just vanished." Word travels fast in a small town. By November 3rd, everyone in Two Harbors knew what had happened. The fishing community was getting nervous, and I couldn't blame them. Oscar Johansson had 3 decades of experience on oar boats. The Carlson brothers were expert technical divers. These weren't people who made stupid mistakes. I started hearing the whispers at the coffee shop on 3rd Avenue. Old-timers talking in low voices about the Adela Shores, the wooden steamship that vanished in 1909 with all 14 crew members. About the Henry Steinbrenner, which sank in 1953 and took 17 men down with her. Over 350 shipwrecks rest in Lake Superior's Minnesota waters. The lake has been claiming lives since before anyone was keeping count. Maybe she was claiming more. The Tourism Bureau director called me on November 4th. "Eric, we need to manage this narrative. Call it what it is. Accidents. The lake is dangerous. Everyone knows that. But we can't have people thinking there's something supernatural going on. I didn't argue with her. Instead, I drove to the Lake County Historical Depot Museum. Margaret Olafsson has been the curator there for 40 years. At 78, she's forgotten more about North Shore history than most people will ever know. I found her in the archives, surrounded by boxes of old newspapers and ledgers. "I wondered when you'd come by," she said without looking up. "Heard about the Carlson boys. And Oscar before them. You're thinking there's a pattern." "Is there?" She pulled out a folding chair for me and spread a series of documents across the table. Newspaper clippings, police reports, handwritten journals. 1897, she said, pointing to a yellowed newspaper. 6 people disappeared from Agate Bay over 2 weeks, all experienced fishermen and sailors. No bodies recovered. She showed me another stack. 1923. 4 commercial fishermen vanished near Knife River within 5 days. 1962. 3 tourists, all strong swimmers, calm weather, gone. I looked at the dates she'd circled in red ink. Always late October through early November. Always when the water temperature drops below 40 degrees, Margaret added. And always in clusters. Years can go by with nothing unusual, then suddenly the lake claims several people in a short span. Your grandfather was sheriff in 1962. He investigated those disappearances. He never mentioned it. He wouldn't have. Margaret pulled out one more folder, this one marked with Ojibwe tribal records. After 1962, your grandfather came to me, said something in the lake was angry, that we disturbed something. He wanted to know about the old stories, the ones the Anishinaabe tell about these waters. She opened the folder. Inside were photocopies of interviews with tribal elders, documents from the Minnesota Historical Society, and drawings, pictographs copied from rock faces along the Canadian shore of Lake Superior. The creature in the drawings had the body of a great cat, muscular and powerful, but it was covered in scales, and from its head swept 2 curved horns like a bison. Its tail was long and serpentine, coiled in the water around it. Mishipeshu, Margaret said. The Underwater Panther, the great lynx. The Anishinaabe say it guards the copper beneath Lake Superior. Lives in caves and tunnels that run throughout the lake bed. It's been here longer than anyone can remember. Longer than the Anishinaabe themselves, some say. Margaret, I deal in facts, evidence. So do I, her voice was sharp. And the fact is, people disappear from these waters in patterns that span over a century. The fact is, your grandfather believed there was something in this lake we don't understand. The fact is, you're sitting here because you know something is wrong. She pushed the drawings toward me. The Ojibwe say Mishipeshu creates storms when it's angry, causes whirlpools with its tail, drowns those who disturb the waters or try to take its copper. Its copper? Native copper runs through the bedrock here. The Anishinaabe mined it for thousands of years, but they did it with respect. Left offerings, performed ceremonies. When white miners came and started extracting it in industrial quantities, Mishipeshu didn't like that. She pulled out a construction permit from 1962, faded and brittle. They built a new marina that year, drilled into the bedrock for the foundation pilings. That's when those 3 tourists disappeared. I stared at the permit, a cold feeling spreading through my chest. What construction is happening now? I went straight from the museum to the county records office, pulled every construction permit issued in the last year, found it on the 3rd page. DNR expansion project at Twin Points boat launch. New ramp construction, improved parking, upgraded facilities for larger vessels. Phase 1 completed in September. The project required drilling 80 feet into the lake bed to take geological samples and ensure proper foundation stability. I drove up to Twin Points that afternoon. It's about 20 miles northeast of Two Harbors, a beautiful spot where the shoreline curves into a small protected bay. The new ramp looked good, professional work. A few construction vehicles were still parked nearby, finishing up the parking area. The site supervisor, Bjorn Hagen, was checking measurements on the parking lot curbs. He's a big man, weathered and solid, the kind of guy who's spent 40 years working outdoors in Minnesota winters. "Sheriff," he said when I approached. "Something wrong with the project?" "Need to ask you about the drilling phase, the bedrock samples." His expression shifted. Why? Just tell me what happened. Bjorn set down his measuring tape. It was strange. We'd drill down, pull up the core samples, and we'd hear this sound, groaning almost, deep, like something was shifting way down below us. We figured it was air pockets or the rock settling from the drilling, but it didn't sound like anything I'd heard in 35 years of construction. Anything else unusual? He hesitated. Some of the guys said they felt like they were being watched while they worked. I know how that sounds. But 2 men quit the project, just walked off without explanation. One of them, Lars Hansen, told me the lake felt wrong, said it felt angry. Bjorn looked out at the water. I thought he was being dramatic. Now I don't know. That evening, Dr. Saarinen called. Her voice was tight with excitement and something else. Concern, maybe. Fear. Eric, I need you to see something. Can you meet me at the research vessel tomorrow morning? She was waiting at the dock when I arrived at 7 a.m. The UMD research vessel was a 40-footer, equipped with sonar and water testing equipment. We headed out into the lake, the water grey and choppy under overcast skies. We've been monitoring water temperatures along the north shore, Dr. Saarinen explained as we motored away from shore. Found a massive thermal anomaly 15 miles offshore, directly east of your construction site. She showed me the monitors in the cabin. Cold water is rising from unprecedented depths. Water that should be near the bottom is coming up to the thermocline. It's disrupting the entire temperature gradient. What would cause that? That's what I wanted to know. She pulled up the sonar images on another screen. So we started mapping the bottom. Eric, there's a cavern system beneath the lake bed. The tunnels extend down over 600 feet. Lake Superior's official maximum depth is 1,332 feet, but these caverns go down into the bedrock itself. I studied the sonar images. They showed passages branching out like a network of veins, connecting larger chambers deep beneath the lake floor. Underwater caves aren't unusual, I said. These aren't natural caves. She zoomed in on one of the passages. Look at the walls. They're angular, geometric. This isn't erosion or natural cave formation. Eric, something carved these tunnels. Something built this system thousands of years ago. The cold feeling in my chest had turned into ice. Something big enough to need tunnels that size. Something that's still down there. She met my eyes. The thermal disruption started in late September, right after the drilling at Twin Points. Whatever is in those caverns, the construction woke it up. I need to explain something about Lake Superior. She's not like other lakes. She's deep, cold and ancient. The indigenous peoples who lived along her shores for thousands of years understood something that we've forgotten. They respected her. They feared her. They knew she wasn't just water and rock. On November 7th at 11:30 at night, I took the county sheriff's boat out alone. I needed to see the water for myself, to understand what we were dealing with. Maybe I needed to prove to myself that I wasn't losing my mind. The air temperature was 28 degrees. The water temperature gauge read 39. The moon was 3 days from full, hanging low over the eastern horizon, its reflection stretching across the black water like a silver road. I killed the running lights and moved slowly along the coast, just me and the sound of the engine and the gentle slap of waves against the hull. At 12:45, my depth finder started acting strange. The display flickered, showing the bottom at 76 feet, then suddenly reading 400 feet, then jumping back to 80. I patrolled these waters for 2 decades. I knew every shoal and drop-off. There was no place near shore where the bottom fell away like that. Then I saw the glow. At first, it was just a faint luminescence deep below, like someone had turned on a light at the bottom of the lake. Blue-green, pulsing slowly. I told myself it was algae, some kind of bioluminescent bloom. But the glow was moving, not drifting with current, but circling beneath my boat with clear intention. Every instinct I had screamed at me to start the engine and run for shore. But I'm the sheriff of this county. These are my waters, my people. I needed to know. I grabbed my spotlight from the equipment locker and leaned over the side, pointing the beam down into the depths. The light cut through the darkness, illuminating particles suspended in the water, small fish darting away from the brightness. At about 40 feet, I saw movement, something large passing through the spotlight beam. I adjusted the angle, following it. The creature rose toward the surface, not quickly, just a steady ascent. At 30 feet, I got my first clear look. The body was massive, longer than my 26-foot patrol boat, covered in scales that gleamed dully in my spotlight, each one the size of a dinner plate. But they weren't organic scales like a fish. They were metallic, copper-coloured, ancient and scarred. The body was serpentine but powerful, with 4 limbs ending in claws that looked like they could rip through steel. Then the head emerged from the darkness, a face that belonged on some prehistoric cat, a lynx or a cougar, but scaled up to impossible size. The head alone was as big as my truck. 2 curved horns swept back from its skull, the same copper colour as its scales, catching my spotlight and gleaming like old metal. Eyes that glowed with their own light, blue-green like the water around it, fixed on me with undeniable intelligence. It wasn't looking at me the way an animal looks at something. It was studying me, evaluating me, deciding. My radio exploded with static, a harsh shriek that made me jump. Then my boat engine died. Not sputtering or coughing, just stopped dead. The electrical system was still running, my lights still on, but the engine was completely silent. The water around me began to move. At first, it was just a gentle current, but it grew stronger. The creature was circling faster now, its massive body creating a whirlpool. My boat started to spin. Water crept over the gunnels, cold lake water flooding into the cockpit. I grabbed the emergency flares from the storage locker. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped them. I managed to fire one, and it burst into brilliant red light, brighter than day, illuminating the entire bay. For a moment I could see the creature in perfect detail, 40 feet long, maybe more. Its copper scales were ancient, scarred and pitted like old metal that had been underwater for centuries. There were marks on its body that might have been wounds, things that had healed over time that I couldn't begin to guess at. The blue-green glow came from somewhere inside it, pulsing like a heartbeat, visible through gaps between its scales. The creature recoiled from the flare, diving deep. The whirlpool stopped instantly. The water went still. My boat engine roared back to life without my hand on the key, the starter turning on its own. I didn't think. I slammed the throttle forward and headed straight for shore at full speed. Behind me, the water glowed blue-green for another 10 minutes, the light pulsing in a rhythm that felt almost like breathing. Then it faded and went dark. I sat in my truck in the boat launch parking lot until dawn, hands still shaking, watching the sun come up over Lake Superior. I'm a rational man. I've been a cop for 24 years. I believe in evidence, in facts, in things that can be explained. Except I'd just seen something that couldn't be explained. At 8 a.m. on November 8th, I called an emergency meeting. Dr. Saarinen, Margaret Olafsson, and Coast Guard Lieutenant James Hayes. We met at my office. I described everything I'd seen, fully expecting them to suggest I'd been hallucinating or seeing things in the dark. Lieutenant Hayes surprised me. "Sheriff, I need to show you something. It's been classified, but under the circumstances, you need to know." He pulled out a folder marked with Coast Guard insignia. "We've received 3 reports from freighter crews over the past 5 years. Large unidentified objects on sonar, shapes that don't match any known vessels or marine life. One captain, John Morrison from the Edmund Fitzgerald II, watched something surface briefly near the ore docks last year. He filed a report describing it as prehistoric and impossible. We archived it as a probable submarine wreck sighting." "Your description matches his report exactly," Hayes continued. "We thought they were seeing debris, wrecks, something explainable. But if you saw it too, if there are multiple witnesses across several years, this thing is real." Margaret spoke up. "We need to talk to someone from the Fond du Lac Band. If this is Mishipeshu, they'll know more than we do. These are their ancestral waters. This is their story, not ours." She made some calls. By noon, we were driving north to a small house near Knife River. William Wabigwan was 82 years old. His face weathered like driftwood, his eyes sharp and clear. His family had lived on these shores for more generations than anyone could count, long before Europeans arrived, before there were towns and roads and electric lights. We sat in his living room. I described what I'd seen on the water. William listened without interrupting, nodding occasionally. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "Mishipeshu has awakened," he finally said. His voice was soft but certain. "My grandfather told me stories about the last time this happened, 1962. Your grandfather came to speak with my grandfather then. What did they say? The same thing I'll tell you now. Mishipeshu is ancient, older than the Anishinaabe, older than this lake in its current form. It sleeps for long periods in the deep tunnels beneath the bedrock, decades, sometimes longer. It guards the copper that runs through the stone. That copper is sacred. It's part of the earth's bones." William stood and walked to a bookshelf, pulling down a wrapped bundle. He unfolded the cloth to reveal a piece of copper, pure and gleaming. "My people mined copper for thousands of years. But we did it with respect. We left offerings. We performed ceremonies. We never took more than we needed. When white miners came and started extracting copper by the ton, Mishipeshu grew angry." "The construction at Twin Points," I said. "We drilled into the tunnels, into its home, into the sacred places." William rewrapped the copper. "When disturbed, Mishipeshu feeds. It takes offerings to satisfy its anger. 3 people are gone. It will take more unless you stop disturbing the bedrock." "How do we stop it?" William's expression was sad. "You show respect. You acknowledge what you've done. You make offerings of your own. But understand, Sheriff, Mishipeshu is not evil. It's a guardian. It protects what belongs to the lake. When we forget that, when we take without asking, without respect, the guardian reminds us." I left William's house with more questions than answers. But one thing was clear. We had to stop the construction. We had to find a way to appease this thing before more people died. On November 9th, at 3:17 in the afternoon, my radio lit up with emergency calls. 3 kayakers missing off Twin Points, right where we drilled into the bedrock. They were college students from UMD, experienced paddlers exploring the coastline. Their kayaks were found capsized in calm water. All 3 had been wearing life jackets. We recovered one of the jackets floating near shore. It had claw marks gouged through the foam. Not teeth, not a bite. Deep scratches like something with talons had grabbed the person wearing it and pulled them under with tremendous force. No blood, just the marks and the absence of the person who'd been wearing it. 6 people missing in 12 days. The next morning I met with the county commissioners. I laid out everything. The evidence, the pattern of disappearances going back over a century, Dr. Saarinen's sonar images showing the cavern system, the thermal disruptions. I proposed an immediate halt to all waterfront construction, especially anything involving drilling into bedrock. They refused. "Sheriff Lindholm, we understand you're under stress," Commissioner Patricia Walsh said. "These disappearances are tragic, but we need to maintain perspective. The tourist economy depends on these improvements. The marina expansion is critical to our future." I showed them the photographs of the corroded lures, the claw-marked life jacket. Dr. Saarinen explained the thermal anomalies, the impossibly deep cavern system. "Something large and alive is in that water," she said. "We need to stop disturbing it." Commissioner Walsh folded her hands on the table. "Dr. Saarinen, with all respect to your credentials, we cannot halt a major infrastructure project based on sonar readings and folktales. We need to call these incidents what they are. Tragic accidents, drownings. The lake is dangerous. Everyone knows that. They wanted me to file the missing persons reports as presumed drownings and close the investigations. Move on. Let it blow over. Forget what I'd seen with my own eyes." On November 11th, I went public. I held a press conference at the county building against direct orders. I described what I'd witnessed on the water, showed the physical evidence, explained the pattern of disappearances. I warned people to stay away from the lake, especially near active construction sites. The media response was immediate and overwhelming. "Lake monster terrorizes Minnesota shore" ran in papers from Duluth to Minneapolis. News trucks filled the streets of 2 harbors. Reporters camped out at every boat launch. The story went national. The county commissioners suspended me that same day, stripped me of my badge and authority pending an internal review. Commissioner Walsh held her own press conference, calling my statements irresponsible and unsubstantiated. She assured everyone that Lake Superior was safe and the disappearances were isolated incidents, but the locals knew better. They'd heard the stories from their grandparents, seen the pattern in the history books. Fishing boats stayed docked. The tourist beaches sat empty. For 3 days, nobody entered the water. And for 3 days, nothing happened. No disappearances, no blue-green glow in the darkness. The lake was calm. Then, on November 14th, the construction company went back to work. They had a contract with the DNR, deadlines to meet, financial penalties for delays. They sent a crew to Twin Points to finish the boat launch expansion. I'd been suspended, had no authority to stop them. All I could do was drive up there and watch from the public parking area as they assembled equipment on a work barge. At 2:30 in the afternoon, the pile driver started up. The sound echoed across the water, a rhythmic pounding that seemed to shake the air itself. Each strike drove another piling deep into the bedrock, deeper than the previous drilling, permanent anchors for the new dock structure. Within 5 minutes, I saw the water near the construction site begin to churn, small at first, just ripples but growing stronger. The workers noticed but kept going. They thought it was turbulence from their equipment. I saw the glow appear beneath the surface. Blue-green, unmistakable, rising from the depths. I ran back to my truck and grabbed my personal radio, tried to reach them on the construction frequency. But I'd been locked out of all official channels when they suspended me. I did the only thing I could. I ran to my personal boat, a 22-foot fishing boat I kept at a nearby access, and launched. By the time I got the engine started and cleared the no-wake zone, I could see workers on the barge scrambling, pointing at the water. 3 massive swells rose around them, not natural waves. 2 localized, rising straight up like something underneath was pushing them up. Then Mishipeshu surfaced, in full daylight, with the sun breaking through clouds. The creature was even more terrifying than it had been at night. 40 feet long at minimum, maybe closer to 50. Its copper scales gleamed in the afternoon light, ancient and weathered. The horns on its head caught the sun like burnished metal. Its eyes, glowing blue-green even in daylight, fixed on the barge with clear intention. The workers screamed. Some tried to run to the edges of the barge. Others froze. The creature's tail whipped through the water with tremendous force, faster than something that large should be able to move. It struck the barge broadside, and the impact sounded like a car crash. Metal shrieked. The pile driver, a piece of equipment that weighed several tons, toppled into the lake. Workers were thrown into the water. I pushed my boat to maximum speed, reached the first worker and hauled him aboard, then a second, a third. Their faces were white with shock, their bodies shaking from more than just the cold water. 2 more workers were still in the lake, clinging to pieces of wreckage, too far away for me to reach quickly. Mishipeshu circled them, moving with the grace of a predator, its glowing eyes fixed on me. It was testing me. I understood that with sudden clarity. This creature was intelligent, thinking, making a choice. It could kill those workers easily. But it was waiting, watching me. Deciding. I remembered William's words, offerings, respect, sacred copper. I looked down at my wrist, my grandfather's watch. He'd given it to me when I graduated from the police academy, told me it had belonged to his father before him. 3 generations of Lindholms had worn this watch. It was pure copper, handmade by a craftsman in Duluth in 1947. It wasn't worth much money, but it was worth everything to me. I unstrapped the watch, held it up so the creature could see it. My voice carried across the water, clear and strong. "This is sacred to me. 3 generations of my family have worn this. As the copper beneath this lake is sacred to you, take this offering, accept my respect, and leave these people." I threw the watch as far as I could. It spun through the air, catching sunlight, copper gleaming. It hit the water and sank slowly, spiraling down into the darkness. Mishipeshu dove. The creature followed the watch down, its massive body moving with surprising grace. The water glowed brighter as it descended, blue-green light pulsing through the depths like a heartbeat. For 10 seconds, nothing happened. The water was still. The workers in the lake clung to their wreckage, not even breathing. Then Mishipeshu surfaced again, directly beside my boat. Close enough that I could have reached out and touched those ancient scales. Close enough that I could see every detail. The scars on its body, marks from things I couldn't imagine, the way its scales overlapped like armor, the intelligence in its eyes, ancient and alien but undeniably aware. It made a sound, deep, resonant, vibrating through my entire body, not a roar or a growl, something else, a low rumbling that rose and fell in pitch, almost like speech but in no language humans have ever spoken. The sound wasn't threatening, it was an acknowledgement, understanding. The creature released the two workers from its circle. They swam toward me as fast as they could and I pulled them aboard. My boat was dangerously overloaded now. 5 people in a vessel meant for 3, but we were alive. Mishipeshu sank back into the depths. The blue-green glow faded slowly, like lights being dimmed one by one. Then the water looked like ordinary lake surface again, grey and choppy under the afternoon sky. The county reinstated me on November 15th. 12 witnesses had seen Mishipeshu attack the barge. Photos and video from workers' cell phones circulated online within hours. Grainy, shot from shaking hands, but unmistakable. The state sent an investigation team. They brought more sophisticated sonar equipment and confirmed everything Dr. Saarinen had found. The deep cavern system, the thermal disruptions, the high copper content in the water. But the creature itself couldn't be located. Dr. Saarinen believed it had returned to the deepest tunnels, miles beneath the lake bed, far beyond the range of our sonar equipment. It made its point, she told me during our final meeting. It showed itself. It proved it was real. Now the question is whether we'll listen. On November 18th, the county officially cancelled the marina expansion at Twin Points. The project was declared permanently halted. The DNR designated a 3-mile radius around the drilling site as a protected archaeological area, based on the evidence of the ancient tunnel system. No construction involving drilling or bedrock disturbance would be permitted. I met with William Wabagwan again. We arranged an agreement between the county and the Fond du Lac band. Traditional water blessing ceremonies would be held monthly. Copper offerings would be left at historic sites along the shore, continuing practices that his people had followed for thousands of years before we arrived. You showed respect, William told me as we stood on the shore of Burlington Bay. You acknowledged what you'd done. You gave something sacred. Mishipeshu remembered that. Will it come back? It never left. It's still down there in the deep places, watching, waiting. It will always be there. He looked out at the water, the same water his ancestors had looked at for countless generations. That's not a bad thing, Sheriff. Some things should be guarded. Some places should remain undisturbed. Mishipeshu reminds us of that. It's not a monster. It's a guardian. But 6 people never came home. Oscar Johansson, who knew these waters better than anyone. Lars and Anders Carlson, brothers who'd explored dozens of shipwrecks together. 3 college students whose whole lives were ahead of them. I carry their names with me every day. Their bodies were never recovered. I filed reports listing them as lost to Lake Superior, which was true as far as it went. I couldn't put taken by ancient creature in an official document, but their families know the truth. We held a memorial service at Burlington Bay in early December. The whole town came. We didn't talk about Mishipeshu directly, but we all understood. The lake takes what it takes. It always has. Some debts get paid in ways we don't like. It's December 16th now, and I still patrol these shores every night. The water temperature has stabilized. Dr. Saarinen reports no more thermal anomalies. The blue-green glow hasn't been seen in weeks. Fishing boats have returned to the water, cautiously at first, then with more confidence. The old-timers leave small pieces of copper at the water's edge when they launch their boats. An ancient practice, revived out of respect and more than a little fear. I watch the water every night, looking for that familiar glow. I know it's down there. I know it's watching. In the deepest tunnels beneath the bedrock, in caves that were carved before humans existed, Mishipeshu waits, protecting its domain as it has for thousands of years, as it will for thousands more. Sometimes late at night when the moon is dark and the water is still, I think I see a faint blue-green pulse far offshore. Just for a moment, then it's gone. Maybe it's my imagination. Maybe it's not. Either way, I know the truth. Lake Superior isn't just water and rock. Something ancient lives in her depths. Something that was here long before us and will be here long after we're gone. Something that demands respect. We forgot that lesson. 6 people paid the price for our forgetting. I won't forget again. Sheriff Eric Lindholm still serves Lake County today. Construction continues along the North Shore, but not near Twin Points. Not anywhere they'd need to drill deep into bedrock. The missing 6 remain officially listed as drowning victims, but the Ojibwe community knows different. They know Mishipeshu guards those waters still, waiting in the deep places, watching for those who would disturb its realm. The Ojibwe have always known. Some things in these waters are older than memory, more powerful than understanding. Mishipeshu isn't evil. It's a guardian, protecting what has always belonged to the lake. And sometimes, when we forget our place, when we take without asking, guardians exact a price. If this case disturbed you as much as it disturbed me, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We're pushing toward 1,000 subscribers by the new year, and we need your help to get there. We're posting daily videos, bringing you the most unexplained cases from across the country. Leave a comment below telling me what you think really happened in those Minnesota waters. Tomorrow we'll be diving into another case that'll make you question everything you think you know about the world. Until then, stay safe out there. You never know what's sleeping beneath the surface.